Okay, folks, welcome to the interview. We are here with Lucas Pelizaro. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
That is very close. Pelizaro is an Italian name, but it got butchered in Brazil, so that's pretty good.
Okay, I'm proud of that. So, Lucas is a filmmaker. He has directed about, say, 13 titles. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah.
Most recently, we had The Virtue of Ignorance, what I had the privilege of watching yesterday, which is fantastic. It's on YouTube, folks. You should check that out. Lucas, you're very, very welcome here to the page. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Very excited for this chat.
Me too, me too. So, my first question would be, you've been in the film industry for a while now. How did you start? What got you into filmmaking?
So I think there was the start of it all was just curiosity. I think I was 16 at a time, and online vlogs was just starting to become a thing. And for me, it was almost an itch of seeing someone do something that I felt like I could do it. So I never really thought much about it. I just kind of turned on the camera and I tried. And then I started playing with the editing softwares. Put it online, some friends saw it, and I kind of had fun. But it wasn't until someone asked me how long it took me to edit the video. And I think it took me about 9 hours. And then their reaction to me spending 9 hours making a video was what kind of clicked of like, oh, if I could do this as a job, I would enjoy the job because I had fun making the video. So that just kind of was kind of the seed of the idea. And from that point on, I always kind of looked for that itch. I was like, what is that thing that I just really want to do it? And that tends to be sort of my North Star.
Yeah, wow. Wow. I mean, it's crazy how, say, something like editing, to anyone who edits, 9 hours is normal, you know? But I understand you completely, as in someone coming across going, whoa, you can spend that much time concentrated on the one thing. Is that what you're saying? As in that sort of reaction is like, whoa, I can do this. Not everybody can do this. This is something I can do.
Exactly. It was this kind of, yeah, it was this idea that someone looked at what I did. For me, it was like sort of like a afternoon. It was like a Sunday that I was just playing around. It was obviously I was learning as well, so it took longer than it would naturally take for the normal video, but I was just playing around, right? For me, it was like this fun thing that I was doing. And someone looked at that as like this really hard thing to do. And I was like, not that it wasn't hard, but there was never a point where I even thought about not doing it. The moment that I thought about doing it was enough of a reason to do it. And I was like, oh, and that kind of got things moving. And then I kept on making more videos, and then people watching was a fun kind of thing. And then I changed it. At the time I used to study engineering, so I changed it from engineering to media. Funny enough, I wasn't going to get into it because I had really bad grades, but because I already knew how to edit, it was what they were going to teach you in the module. So it was something they were like, you're kind of already ahead of the class, therefore you can come in. And that kind of led me to the education path of filmmaking and media in general. But yeah, it's just curiosity.
Good, good. And in terms of writing, I have a feeling you're a funny guy. I watched The Horseman yesterday as well in preparation for the interview, and it's so funny. And I see you co-wrote that and say your other credits as well. I mean, where's the comedy coming from in these movies? Or the short films even, because they're genuinely really funny.
Uh, I can't take all the credit. I feel like comedy, for me especially, comedy comes from like a collaborative thing. I think I find it that there's a very popular quote, I believe, by Charlie Chaplin that if you zoom in close enough, everything is funny. So I think tragedy and like this, I think everything bad that happens to you, if you wait long enough, it will become funny. When you look back, there is a way to reflect into it. So I think about it like, how can you look at a situation in a funny way? And even, especially when it comes to movies, if I'm trying to write something that I wanted to be a comedy, I'll never try and make it a comedy first. I'll usually try and make it about something. So for me, The Horseman was like this uh, this dual friendship kind of play. And I was like, what would happen if someone's trying to like rob a house for the first time? And then I was like, this could be a very funny premise. And then obviously we had Jake and Arthur, who are the two actors in the film, who were just absolutely hilarious from their audition together. Actually, they were friends before they even came in the film. They're the first audition that I saw for it, and that just stuck out for me. They had such a funny, interesting chemistry. And then, so when it came to the film, I do write a lot of the things that I make, but I'm not precious about the writing. So I'm always open. If someone has a better idea, we'll go with the better idea. And especially actors, I like to give them the character. And then for me, like, once they take ownership of the character, they should know better than I do how that character should come across. And they really did it. Jake is also the actor who plays in Virtue of Ignorance. And that film is also something that I wrote fairly quickly. And I wrote with him in mind. And I told him, like, I'm writing an outline for what the film should be. What would be said and how it's going to come across is really something that I was open to figure it out on the day. And Jake didn't disappoint.
I mean, Jake and Arthur together, their chemistry, just comedic timing. I was laughing at first when they were going having their back and forth about, are we going to go in the house? Are we not going to go in the house? You're pressuring me into doing this. But the minute they started talking and forgetting that they had the horse mask on was absolutely hilarious. Did the mask, was the mask part of the writing process? As in, was that the idea? As in, did you have to name the horseman, or was it you had the idea they were gonna just wear a mask and then the comedy came from that? I mean, was it always gonna be a horse?
Horse. That was the, because for me, this, I think I wrote the script, and once I made the script into a comedy, I thought I was like, because I always had this idea they would wear a mask, and I think I took a little bit of reference from Baby Driver when they have the Mike Myers mask. They're gonna try and do a robbery, and they put this Mike Myers mask, and they kind of started discussing about the mask, and I thought that was really funny. I was like, what mask could I use that would be synonymous with the film, and you would make it just elevate the comedy. And then I remember seeing, I think at the time it was during COVID. So I saw a lot of people with these like horse masks, and I love the way they kind of like jiggle out the U-turn, and they're kind of disproportional. And then that came the idea of like the as a horseman. So Arthur, who played one of the characters, would try to make a thing where like this is a bonding experience, while Jake just cares about like doing the actual robbery. And then for me, the mask just elevated the comedy. And I think one of the first things that happen when they put the mask is that they both look at each other. And there's something so incredibly funny that I find it with the symmetry of how that plays out, because it's just absurdity. And I think for me, absurdity is the funniest thing.
And I just love the backstory with the two guys. I mean, they're talking at first. You can tell they know each other, and Arthur is very uncomfortable, and then Jake Waring, the other character, is sort of like, "Come on, let's just do this, let's just do this." And at the end, Arthur just has this whole emotional breakdown where he's like, "You know what? You're not my friend anymore. What is going on?" And they have this, they reconcile and stuff like that, and it's just it wasn't what I expected when the movie started. It just went in a whole different direction, and I really enjoyed watching it, man. It was good job. And you made a cameo appearance at the end. You were the owner of the house, which, after doing research on your page and stuff like that, I wasn't expecting you to show up at the end. So there he is, you know. So
That film was a very interesting process, because when I first written, it was very different. The car was part of it. It was a big part of it, but it was only part of it. And then the more and more I thought about it, I was like, what if that was the confined space? What if everything is about this like moment right before? And then I really emphasize for the film to be there. And I always love movies like 21 Jump Street and things like that, where the credits are part of the story. They're like sort of giving you the aftermath. So I was like, okay, so we'll play the film within the car, and then whatever happens after the car is just sort of your aftermath. Is the story is kind of done, and you're just getting the satisfaction of understanding what happened. And then when it came to it, I was like, I would just really love to, especially because it was just a photograph. I was like, I'll do it. I was just happy to be on there.
Yeah, no. I know it was perfect. I mean, you're in terms of like tone and style of filmmaking. I got like from watching it as a fan of film myself. I got like elements of, as you mentioned, even like Edgar Wright, Baby Driver, stuff like that, and even things like 21 Jump Street. What are your inspirations, or is like say, what type of directors would you aspire to? What type of films factored in to your filmmaking style?
I would say it changes quite often, but the few directors that always kind of come back to me as references and big inspirations are definitely Edgar Wright for once. But I think comedic wise, I really look up to Taika Waititi. I find that the way he finds comedy within the absurdity and within the sadness is something that I really inspired to do it with the writing. Uh, I think Peter Jackson as well in terms of just being able to envision exactly what you want. I think he's really well precise on what things should look like and to have that clear of image and be able to translate those things into film are things that often kind of I really inspired to. But honestly, I'm someone who films had a really big impact on me when I was a child. So I always kind of cringe at myself a little bit when it comes on set, and often a lot of my references were like animations and things that are just like often kind of discarded. It was just like fun movies, but for me, that's what movies are. They're like fun. They're interesting. They're like this beautiful life lesson wrapped in joy, and that's often what I try to do with my films. Is like I'll write what I want the film to be, and then I'll wrap into something that makes it more entertaining and more visually appealing. So that's usually how I try to go about it. But it happens quite often that like a very particular scene that comes to mind. I did a show this year where we had this scene where this woman was about to get married to someone who she didn't want to get married. So she was by herself. She had a veil. She was crying. She's looking at the mirror in this very like beautiful, reflective, kind of sad moment, and I couldn't help myself. All I saw was Shrek and the Hallelujah moment playing, and I was like, I have to tell her because that's all I can see right now. And it was at first it was kind of like, oh, it's funny you would think of Shrek for this, but it really helped. The scene turned out incredibly beautiful, and I feel in I went down this rabbit hole of understanding why does animation play such a big impact on my references and what I like. And I think it's because writing a very good film with a beautiful meaning purpose that a kid can understand is a even bigger task. If you think of Toy Story, if you think of, I mean, most of the Disney classics and Pixar's, how do you write something that resonates with an adult but a kid can understand? And for me, it's like, oh, you really simplify the idea to the purest level, and that is a task on its own.
Yeah, I mean Shrek in particular. What a movie! I mean, this is such a coincidence because me and my partner only watched Shrek 1 and 2 last week, believe it or not. And we're only talking about, say, the greater message of Shrek. And just, it's a shame how some animated movies they can get underappreciated because they're animated. But in terms of a screenplay alone, Shrek is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. The second one as well. It's such a beautiful idea. And as you said so eloquently there, something a child can understand. Looks and say being beautiful are not everything. In the end, Shrek and Fiona are together and all of that stuff is gone out the window. So I mean, movies have such a beautiful power, and I could not agree with you more. I just want to touch on the virtue of ignorance with speaking to Jake Waring earlier. I mean, he was so funny in that movie. I mean, or in that short film. I genuinely it was I think 5 seconds into it. At first, I was thinking, okay, this guy is serious. He's a CEO. He's an entrepreneur. He's probably like, he's so successful. But in his performance, he lets us slip that he's like he's full of it straight away, and you're like, wow. Wow, where did this character Leon Lance come from? Because I love the short film.
Thank you very much. So the whole idea for the short film came from a frustration that I had. I really wanted to make a film as quickly as possible. I wanted, it was like, what can I do to make something different and really pierce through a film that I like. Because a big frustration that I have is how long it takes to make a movie, right? So every film, from the writing, like from the idea to the writing to putting it all together, shooting, editing, often months, if not years. And Virtue of Ignorance, it was something that I wanted to do as fast as humanly possible. Overall, from the writing to the film being done was about 40 days. And it was for me, I wanted to write about something that I knew, and I wanted to do it in a way that I could basically take on all the roles. I knew it wasn't going to be perfect. All I needed was someone I could trust, and Jake was definitely at the head of that list. I was like, I know I can lean on him because he did a lot of improvising for The Horseman. So I was like, if I write a somewhere decent story that we can follow, I know I can bring him in. And I'm someone who really enjoys learning about finance and watching all these kind of entrepreneur and all these things online. So I thought it would be an interesting topic because the same time that I think they're very useful and good, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of sort of building your ego but not really doing anything. And I was like, what if I created a character that was just inflated with these ideas? Someone who every day has a new idea but doesn't really act on one thing or can't really focus or always looking for the fastest, quickest way. What would this person look like? How would they talk? And Jake really resonated and really understood the task. And he was really great at coming up with a lot of things. I gave him a couple of references, but he went even further. And then the playing with the video game and these maps that really don't make sense. Because I didn't want to make the character too unrealistic. So if you notice, there are things that he's saying that sort of make sense, right? He is not entirely off, and I think that's where a lot of misunderstanding online kind of comes from, because you have this very fine line between what is good and useful information, and then you have it mixed in with something that doesn't quite make sense. So you can't point it out and say this is bad, but it's clearly not good either. So I was like, how can we kind of complicate this character by just giving him too much? And then there's the small lies, and obviously Jake really comes through it, and he make those small moments shine when you're realizing he's talking to his mom, when he's obviously talking a big deal of himself. There's small reactions here and there to certain things that happen. Jake really makes those moments shine, and for me, the silver lining of the movie lives in those cracks that you see him in.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Leon Lance, the character alone, was super realistic. He's very real. I've spoken to Leon Lance's, you know, you're in a pub or somewhere where your friends are coming over and like, oh, well, my page is going to be huge. I mean, look at what I'm doing. I have this meeting tomorrow, this meeting. And the reality is he's on the phone to his dad in a sandwich shop. You know, it's so realistic. I thought it was an inspired piece, really. Speaking of the shop when he was on the phone to his dad, how did you film that? Because I was looking at that scene just from a filmmaking standpoint. Did you get permission to go in, or did Jake just sit in there and he had a mic on him? You're recording from outside. Tell me a bit about that.
The entire film was just me and Jake. So I wanted to shoot the film in a way that we were almost if we were vlogging. The idea is that he hired someone to come and sort of document his moment that he's about to blow. I think that was sort of the conscious of the setup. And then there are these moments where we're watching him. And what I did, I used the longest lens I could get, which was like a 250 millimeter. And I just went as far, like I went in on top of the train station and I filmed him from a distance. And the idea is to feel very observant. And you have these moments that he's very self-aware that he's being recorded. And then you have these slight moments that he doesn't know he's being recorded, but he's still mic'd on. And it was very big reference on like things like The Office and shows like that, where there are moments of awareness. And I think anybody who ever filmed themselves know that within time you kind of forget the camera. Like, so that was always the play with the film, was like you start off with like this very aware interview, his playing into the camera, and then slowly you start just seeing him as he is, and like how he just behaves. He's just trying things out but not quite working. He is talking to his family and trying to play it bigger. And so a lot of all the outside scenes, it was really just me and Jake. We just kind of went about it. It was always written that I wanted him to go to a sandwich shop and have that sort of. It was always written that he was going to go to a sandwich shop and had this more sort of intimate talk, because I wanted the film to end on this note that even if he isn't the most integral character in the world, he has his good reasons. He wants to make someone proud. He wants to be, he believes he could be this thing that he sets himself to be, even if he isn't going by the right ways. So the center shop was always kind of written in there. And I believe we did that all in one take. I don't think most of the film was sort of just once. I don't think there was anything that we redid it. And then we just kind of went about it. The only things I had into plays was we shot here at my house. We actually shot most of the interview in this room, the living room. We went around Kingston, which is an area that I know very well. And then Max, who's the other character does in there, is a friend of mine as well. And we use his studio to kind of get some of the bits. But it was all things that I had access to and just a will to do it.
Yeah.
So camera-wise, we used a FX3, so a Sony FX3. I use equipment that I kind of already own. Most of it was zoom lenses, but for the interviews, we'd use a couple of Samian primes that I had that I bought it many years ago. As a second camera, I think we had a Sony A7 III. And those are just the cameras that I have. That's kind of what I shoot my YouTube videos with. And it's a camera that I think is very reliable and really good. I have a couple of lights as well. I have a couple of Godox lights. I would say most of it comes from a very good understanding of like what creates good image. So I knew I didn't want to stylize anything too much because I wanted to feel like an everyday, for the sake of having, because I wanted to feel like a vlog. So usually if you film a vlog, you just kind of go into the space and you kind of just do it. You don't often have time to set up. So I try to keep this setup sort of minimal, where always kind of being very aware of windows. So if you notice, every indoor setting is often side to the window, and then I would just add a light to emphasize the window light, so you would look naturally good. And that was always my aim. When he's in the living room, he's sitting as close to the window as possible, and that kind of same setup apply. And then when we went outside, it was just choosing the right time of day so it would look somewhere consistent. But also the fact that we shot a lot, but we didn't reshoot anything. So everything was kind of like, I think often a problem when you're trying to do it, if you're redoing too many things, you start tweaking, suddenly the setup that you had on the first take and on the fourth take are wildly different. And they just don't cut together. Well, because we were doing everything sort of very forward moving, things would just look that way and we would stick to it. And then coming into post-production, just being very aware of color grading. I feel like people are, by the time you get to color grading, you're kind of tired of the film. So people are just kind of like, this looks good. But color grading is incredibly important.
It can change the tone.
It can change completely, yeah. So I think I did 3 different versions of the grade until I found something that I was a little bit happier with. And it's just finding that natural look, but the hat contrast. and dressing, like I really wanted him to wear colors, so I gave him like a purple jumper, and it like so when he's walking outside, he stands out. When he's inside, the wall that I have here, I wanted to buy a wallpaper for it, but I just didn't have the time. So I wanted to make sure he would stand out from the background. So there's these understandings of contrast, understanding of lighting, having the best camera you can, not being afraid of using a better codecs to just retain as much information as possible. But it was a lot of it with this goal of hopefully inspiring people to feel capable of doing it. You know, like if you can go and make a film on your own. That movie could have easily been shot on an iPhone. Someone may argue that it could have been even better if you shot on an iPhone. We got away with shooting outside with a camera, but with an iPhone, you could have even gone further.
I mean,
For me, filmmaking comes from, I think you do it enough and it becomes instinctual and it becomes sort of like a gut feeling. I had this advice given to me a long time ago that your taste for film should be based on the films that you like and no one else does. Those are the things that like that's your taste because it's very easy to like Dune and Interstellar because everybody does. But what is the movie that you love that no one else does? What is the thing that you gravitate towards and is not necessarily popular? And for me, especially in films, but also into my kind of online videos, the Casey Neistat of it, the sort of DIY filmmaking has always resonated with me. The sort of grab the camera and shoot it. I love the sort of imperfection of it. I love seeing the rough edges of the film. I love like Virtue of Ignorance is one of my favorite things that I made because I embraced the imperfection of it. Like even though it was very deliberate, like the shakiness of it all, the camera sway, like going up and down, and you see me miking him up. All those things were very intentionally there, but I knew it would give that feeling of like rough around the edges. So when it comes to approaching cameras and approaching how I'm gonna edit or how I'm gonna do a title scene, I'm often more intuitive towards just doing it and not too precious on how it's going to be done. So the introduction of a video, you see a 360 footage and you see a time lapse and you see odd transitions and cuts, and that often comes from me just going by like a gut feeling. And I mean, I've been making videos, I mean, since I was 15, so 15 years of just playing around. And then my approach to making videos online, it goes kind of hand in hand with what I was talking about, virtue of ignorance. I had this big conflict between should I make films, should I make YouTube videos or online content? Because I always loved both. I started playing around on YouTube, and then I went to school and I learned how to make films, and I just couldn't choose. And often, what would happen is very similar to the character. I couldn't commit to anything. I would choose to make films and I would completely ignore anything online, and then I'll get frustrated because I will spend all this effort and maybe I'll get one movie made in a year. And then I'll completely shift and I'll go make YouTube videos. And it was really hard to be consistent and creative, and I wasn't making anything bigger. I was just making these things. And it wasn't until I decided to separate the tasks and do both. So for me, my creativity is often more expressed on my films. At the moment, I have 2 films that I've written that I'm kind of working to get it done. That's where my creativity goes. That's where I pour my heart and soul. My artist self goes into my movies. The online presence became from my wanting to create community, wanting to build connection with an audience. So I formulated the videos a lot more. So even though there's a few videos like the ones you mentioned that has a little more creativity, more play into it, often my videos online are very kind of formulated and just about expressing my thoughts and ideas. So they're often about movies and top 10 sort of plays that I do. So those are a little more formulated, and even though there's a creative around it, they're not necessarily a creative expression every day, which allows me to be more consistent, which allows me to be more effective on making the videos and a little less precious about it. Not every video there is incredibly amazing and is absolutely fine. So I managed to do both now because I kind of separated what I want out of each. I don't have a
Balance,
pressure.
isn't it?
Yeah, I don't pressure myself to always have a film done, and I don't pressure myself to be the most creative with the videos. But it turned out for the best, where the videos are sort of performing well and sort of doing what I wanted them to do, and actually feel more free to make the films that I want to do. So I like to think that I hit a good spot where things are finally moving in the direction that I want them to.
Ah, you did, man. You have nearly 300,000 followers. You're like in the halfway mark to there. I'm getting the wrap from just a few of the members of the team on our Zoom record time. So I'll end it with one final question, if you wouldn't mind, Lucas. You've been in the film industry for a while, as in terms of you're making your films. You have 13 directing credits, writing and stuff like that. What advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers who are just starting out?
It might be a little rough, but I like to think that unless you have to, don't do it. Because there is a lot of people that really want to do it and they barely get to. So unless you have an unstoppable desire to do it, don't do it. And if you do have it, if you have a burning sensation of like, I need to make this, don't let anybody stop you. Don't let anyone tell you how. For me, one of the biggest advantages that you have when you're starting out, there's the naivety of it all. You don't know how to do it. Therefore, figure it out while doing it. Don't try and learn to do it to learn. And the second thing is nobody's looking. If it looks bad, if it doesn't work, if you break it along the way, it's absolutely fine. It's not until someone's paying you to do it that becomes a little bit of an issue. So while you can just go and make it yourself, go and make it yourself. If you have to shoot on the phone, shoot on the phone. And try to always learn. There's never enough to learn. You're never done learning. And, just find your path. If you can borrow a camera, borrow a camera. If you have a friend who can pretend to be the Joker, get him to play the Joker. You can copy when you're starting out. You can do whatever you want. There is no wrong answers. And don't formulate yourself. If you want to make a YouTube video, make a YouTube video. You want to make a movie, make a movie. You can make it and then label it. It's really about I've graduated from university and I've done many things. Nobody has ever asked me for my diploma. Everybody wants to see what I've done. So what I've done is way more valuable than any degree I've ever gotten. So that for me is just about break things and get making.
That'll make one hell of a reel, man. So Lucas, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, man, and meet you here virtually. I'd love to do this again if you're open to it. I love talking to you, hearing about these films. I feel like good things are going to happen to you, man. Your films are good to the point where they're going to get out there, they're going to get bigger and bigger. It's just been a pleasure to chat to you, man, and I hope we get to do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to to have this chance. And if I'm ever in Dublin, or if you're over in London, let's catch up and do this again.
Of course, man. Of course, yeah. By all means, we could do it in person sometime.